Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 120th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. I'm Milan Starcic with co-host Thomas S. and soon-to-be co-host Andrew Normand. But not yet. Today's topic is freedom to me. Can you share what this means to you, Thomas, and why you're happy to discuss this here today?
Whoa, right after it. You're getting right after it, Milan.
Yeah, that's what we do here.
Yeah, I like that. No beating around.
You like frying pan. You like frying pans. You like frying pan responses.
I do. The intensity of it. I like that. You know, it's interesting on a side note, just because we can do that here.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my sister-in-law a while ago about how I gravitate towards intense situations, like even negative ones sometimes. Like, I just want to feel it. I just want to live. You know what I mean? Like, I want to experience I don't like small talk. You know what I mean? That's one example. Like, let's get right to it. Like, I want to get into the nitty-gritty of life, whether that's interactions with human beings or experiencing crazy shit. You know, like I don't know if that's the adrenaline junkie in me, the addict in me, the whatever. It's probably a mix of all the crazy parts that I have. But yeah, small talk to me is the worst. So I appreciate you guys and how you run this ship. Freedom. Well, you know, what an awesome topic, and because it's so layered, right? It's not a canned answer. It could be a canned answer. In fact, there are times in my life where I could have just spouted off some general trope about, you know, I have the ability to make choices and da-da-da. And, you know, there's all sorts of different types of freedom. We beat our chest here in the Western world about the freedoms we're allotted, which are very true and real in a lot of ways. But freedom for me, the one piece of it that I always gravitate back to is not being locked in a hypothetical prison cell of my own making, right? Like, I can give you a million different examples of times in my life where I made grand plans, often loaded. You know, I was going to do this, I was going to do that. And even making the plan, this is funny, and this is something that I still notice in my life today. Even making the plan of action made me feel accomplished. Now, I never did it. I never carried it out. I was unable to do it for whatever reason. There was nothing. I mean, certainly there were all the obstacles that people have in making life changes, you know, financial, personal. Well, this isn't gonna, I got to go here. I got to do this. I couldn't take the steps to do them for what I was handcuffed, you know.
Was that pun intended on take the steps to do that?
Yeah, no, it wasn't, but yes, certainly it's fitting. But I couldn't put one foot in front of the other to make anything happen. You know, I was stuck on the hamster wheel. I was in Groundhog Day. Like, every day was the same. You know, that's whatever you want to call it. Waking up day after day, whether it was the idea of stopping drinking and drugs, like that whole hamster wheel of like, I don't want to drink today. However much time passes on that given day, whether it was 10 minutes or 2 hours or 6 hours or whatever, eventually I was drinking, you know. That certainly happened. but also just like things in my life that I wanted to change that I found to be unpleasant. I was incapable of changing them, you know, for whatever reason. I just couldn't fucking make it happen. I would, there wasn't anything visible that you could see to be like, oh, that guy can't fucking, you know, make a change. Yeah, I wasn't handicapped. I didn't have any, like, I wasn't completely destitute. I had a little bit of operating money, uh, but I just couldn't do it, you know, for whatever reason. I lacked the freedom to make changes. Um, Sobriety, recovery has given me the ability to do anything. And that's, I mean, I don't mean that. I don't, I mean that as it sounds, right? I literally can do anything that I want to. I can go anywhere I want to. I can become anything I want to. I mean, within reason, you know, I'm never going to be a professional basketball player, but I, I'm able to take the steps necessary to make changes and make advancements in my life, which, you know, I never ever was able to before. That's a very simple answer. I definitely will elaborate on that and drill into that and what that means to me and some of the opportunities I've gotten, blah blah blah, all those things as we go through this. But yeah, that's basically you know, what I gravitate back towards today is that freedom.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I really like what you said about the making the dreams up and it giving you a sense of accomplishment. I had one friend who, like, I would call the tragic alcoholic of our group in high school. Like he was like self-proclaimed alcoholic by the time we were 18, you know, and kicked out by his parents for drinking. I tried to help him. He had no desire to change or help himself, right? That was when I first learned you can't help someone that doesn't want to help themselves. But he had this way where he would like fantasize these things, like, you know, and like go through the whole thing in his mind. And he said, you know, he's like, I know you think I don't accomplish anything. He's like, but I get the joy of accomplishment just from dreaming about it. And that was enough for him. Like that was enough for him to not leave the couch for days. Like was
Yeah.
just lying there and thinking about it. And I actually, you know what? I actually experienced envy for that.
Mm.
I'm like, I don't get that joy until I actually do the thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember just thinking, gosh, like, you know, that's such a much lower budget joy in life. Like it really was. And you know, like the topic freedom to me, the reason why I rolled out with this topic for us was kind of it follows our journey of surrender. You know that we kind of been talking together about a lot with you here on the show. And you know you kind of spawned the great resurrendering of March 2025. That's what we've come to
Ah,
call it now, the great resurrendering. There's like before resurrender and after resurrender. It's like timelines, right,
yeah.
of recovery. But you know, I was thinking about this topic today while I was walking. You know, we both walk a lot in the morning, and for me, it's kind of a good reflection point where I do my prayer, but I also think about things. And I thought freedom to me is something that is always changing. Like it's today's freedom is not what I would 5 days ago, or what I could have conceived of 5 years ago. You know,
Hmm.
like, you know, freedom to me was, you know, like in my addiction was a pile of money, my phone off, and nobody to fucking hassle me for a few days. You know, like, and obviously that money was going to turn into things that were going to destroy my life. But, you know,
Totally.
yeah, but it was, you know, that would have been more freedom and, you know, the money to do whatever ridiculous things while, you know, I was in that state to be. But, you know, then I was talking with the sponsee about it, and we're having these morning discussions about a spiritual principle every day. Like I printed out a list of 100. Every morning we call each other and we talk for 10 minutes. Each of us shares on that principle, and
Wow.
freedom was a couple days ago, and for me, I had completely forgotten the freedom from addiction or drinking, whichever, just either. Like, I feel that my recovery is so secure that I'm not worrying about that on a day to day basis at all anymore, but for him, that was like first and foremost on his share,
Yeah.
because he had had a relapse back in March, and it's just something that he's still struggling with, but I love his honesty, but it actually just reminded me. I'm like, whoa, I'm actually, yeah, pretty grateful for that freedom, even though I just don't even think about it now. Like, it's kind of like you only think about your ankle once you sprain it. You're not
Hmm.
every step, you're not like ankle, ankle, ankle. But when your
Right.
ankle's sprained, you're like ankle, ankle, ankle. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
what's
yeah.
that ankle? Yeah. And so, yeah, I think there's a ton to this topic, really. And so we might as well just roll into questions. But I loved that you shared that about about the accomplishment thing, because that just brought me right back to my friend Beeve. And yeah.
I like that you remembered that, and that's kind of a sweet story that he just was sitting there happy. It's just one of those like sad, sweet stories, you know.
Yeah.
I my my example is, and I don't, it's like when I have a lot of things to do and they're all swirling around in my head and I'm feeling a little bit crazy and I make a list. Making the list for me is an accomplishment. Now, I can get into trouble because I got to do the list. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
making the list, it's like, all right, I'm all set. I did that, took care of that. Now I feel like I've accomplished something. So it's kind of a catch 22, right? Like the steps need to be taken, all of them.
Hmm.
I mean, let's compare it to AA, right? Like
Yeah.
you can get stuck working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's why, sponsorship and doing this deal with other people is so important. Because if I were, I have done the steps a few times, and there is certainly a sense of accomplishment completing a step, especially a big, you know, in work intensive step, like a step 4 or amends, step 9, right? Where you make an amend, you're like, oh man, thank God I did that one. That felt great. And then you can just fucking stop, and you can sit in that sense of accomplishment when you're not done. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, so yes, taking certain steps both in recovery and in life certainly is important, but the idea of continuing on and pressing forward and taking more that to me gets, sometimes I can find myself in a tricky situation where I just, as in recovery rooms, you'll hear it called rest on your laurels, right? Like
I thought
took care
laurels
of
were
it.
your ass,
Yeah.
but laurels are your accolades. I did.
Yes. Like I did some things. I'm a good guy now,
Yeah.
like I've made some changes. And frankly, in comparison to what I was, I am a good guy.
Yeah.
I'm pleasant to be around most of the time. I don't, cheat people, steal from people, tell lie. I don't do the shit that I used to do. Um, but that doesn't mean that I'm all set. That doesn't mean that I'm a finished product. In fact, the less time I spend progressing, the more, time I'm regressing. Like I'm either working away from a drink or towards a drink, right? Like there's two
Mm,
directions. Standing still isn't an option.
no.
And that's not to say that I'm perfect at this. I definitely have had times in my life, in my recovery, where I've been sliding back towards a drink, and it's a matter of recognizing those that situation and getting scared enough and sometimes getting in enough pain that I recognize it and need to get out of it and find a way out of it. And fortunately, we have the tools to get out of it. We all know this, right? We hear about the tools. And there are times when we're actively using them, moving, progressing, trudging the road of happy destiny, as they say. And there are other times where, for whatever fucking reason, man, and like I said, have slid into these situations more times than I can count. For whatever reason, I'm not calling up other alcoholics and telling them how I feel. For whatever reason, I'm not calling my sponsor. I'm not calling my sponsor right now very much, and that sucks. And that's something that I've been recognizing and I need to fix. He just moved away about a year ago. It's been harder. It's been a different dynamic, that we had. And that's been challenging. And I haven't figured out a way to really, make it right. And I recognize that. And I know I need to fix it. That's an example. There are times when prayer and meditation is hard. When I had my second child and my meditation period in the morning was super disruptive because my wife wasn't about to be super stoked on me disappearing for 30 minutes first thing in the morning when getting two kids ready for school is a super nightmare. So, I've got to work that in somewhere else. These are periods of time in my life and in my recovery that I've struggled. And, it's about noticing those, and hopefully the struggle gets less, and hopefully the pain it takes to take action gets less and less. And I find myself back on track. I take whatever steps are necessary. I use whatever tools that I have to get myself back in line and back where I want to be. And that's certainly sober, right? That's the baseline, right? Not drinking, not using. That's number one. But, after enough days of not doing those things, your bar gets higher. And I want to feel, peace and serenity and less anxiety and all those things.
Maybe a little joy.
Yeah, joy, all that shit, right? That's the high end, right? But I definitely don't want to feel the negatives.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that's how I want to operate on a daily basis. And I don't necessarily notice it 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, but pretty quick, I notice that I'm feeling funky and I got to figure out what's going on. So yeah, that's just a side note to your story about your buddy.
Well, I'm glad you kind of went deeper on that. Really, I mean, I wasn't belittling what you were saying or whatever. There wasn't something negative. It just instantly it took me right back to that conversation with Beav about that, and me just being like, wow, like I wish that But I would like to say something to what you said there is when you talk about the feeling of accomplishment of making the list.
Mm-hmm.
Making the list takes away the fog of, I got way too fucking much shit to do in my head.
Sure.
Like, if I can quantify it with the list, that really is a defining moment of now I have actionable steps.
Yeah.
Like I agree with that. That is an accomplishment. Organizing the tasks is an accomplishment.
Sure.
100%. Like for me, it is the difference between the impending doom and okay, maybe I can get this done today, or maybe I can't. But it's like I know if all of a sudden I made a list of 8 things, I'm like, I can for sure knock 4 off today. And at least I know like it's not like the infinite like just a failure,
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, 2 before lunch, 2 after lunch, and maybe a 5th, depending, Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. And I think that that for addicts and alcoholics coming into the program, learning how to organize and kind of quantify your life into biteable chunks is an important thing to stop self-loathing and guilt about things. Like I think that we live in such a world of chaos for a while that's a skill that kind of gets shoved to the side because we're just trying to cram as much chaos in between everything else that we can until the everything else falls off the side. But I do think, it's kind of like one of the reasons why treatment center puts you on a tight schedule to begin with, because there is, there can be like a serenity in the knowledge of the next step,
Yes.
and just like you were saying, when you have that morning thing that, your meditation time that got shoved aside because of real life, right? Like, I live somewhere really hot. I go and I've been walking like an excessive amount these days, like maybe 19, 20K a day. And yeah, it's a lot, but I have to do it before it's hot or it's just
Mm.
too much, right? So then now all my morning stuff is shifted like 2 or 3 hours ahead, which makes
Mhm.
for a whole different dynamic of internal peace in the morning.
Mm.
And I'm
Yes.
finding that it's like, yeah, I'm getting my exercise, but I'm thrown off like on my emotional sobriety a bit.
Mm.
And but the thing is that I feel like right now I'm getting such a benefit from the cardio of like my brain starting to clear even more and stuff like that. And that it's like, I don't know whether I want to sacrifice my physical situation or my emotional one and where that balance lies, right? So
That's funny. You got to find it. The
I
balance
know.
is tricky.
But
You
this
know,
is the
I
thing is you can't I can't have a hard and fast time of everything here because the heat time and level changes so much in the year that like I've
Mhm.
got the spring and fall zones and then I've got the summer one which we're on right now and the summer one is really the most unrelenting. Like it's like you just don't do something when it's 35 to 45 degrees out.
It gets that hot where you're at.
It gets to 49 and a half. I've seen it here.
That's wild.
It's
In
hot
Canada.
in Canada. Like, dude, I've had it where I used to do construction and I was helping this guy build a bed and breakfast and he had a particularly dark pour for the pad for this bed and breakfast. It got so hot. I had like this foam runner and it went and it squished sideways. And my
Wow.
shoe was like the shoe and the sole were off angle after that. And I said to the guy, I said, "Hey man, I don't think you're paying one pair an hour." I said, "I think we're calling it for today." I'm like, "My shoes are melting here." And he
That's wild.
and he was like, "Yeah," he's like, "I think we're done for the day." We were starting at like 3:30 a.m. to try and beat the heat.
Beat the heat.
Yeah, and but it just got that week was just insane. But there was literally cantaloupes bigger than basketballs that summer.
Yeah.
Like I
Yep.
bought a
Pros and
box. I
cons.
I bought a box that was as big as my arms could go out. And I'm not a small armed guy, and it held barely held four cantaloupe.
Oh boy. Well, to your point, I think having a routine is super important, especially in early recovery. That's why they tell you in rehab to make your bed every day. Or that's why they tell you, in early recovery, a sponsor would tell you, wake up and make your bed every day. Because that's a thing you can do and train yourself that one step after another is what you need to do, right?
Mhm.
Because we're so used to waking up in pure chaos and living in pure chaos, right? And sure, it's a simple thing. Wake up, hit your knees, say a prayer, make your bed. These are things that are built in to early recovery to help you start your day without the swirling, feelings and emotions going on. I was in a meeting last night. We're getting off on tangents here. I hope
I
that's
don't
all right.
care.
I was in a meeting last night.
This is the freedom toss.
Yeah, we're free, man. We're free flowing. This is the meeting I was in, the reading, something in the reading was about the word that jumped out to me in the reading was despair. And I remember waking up in if I didn't get sober, I'm sorry, if I wasn't an addict and wasn't living in addiction, I don't know that I would fully wrap my head around the word despair. That, but I understand it. And it's the feeling that I used to wake up to every single morning,
Hmm.
where it's just this like, I don't know what to do, how to do it, how to change this. All my options seem worse than the next. But I feel terrible. This is terrible. I'm in complete despair. And waking up and doing something, having something to do can help that, right? Whether it's making your bed, whether it's saying a prayer, whether it's going for a walk, going to the gym, that sort of thing can really help combat that, especially in early sobriety. And I was saying in this meeting last night that I feel a lot of emotions these days. I feel all the negative ones for the most part from time to time. Mostly they're positive, but I also feel the negative ones too. I feel angry. I feel depressed. I feel lonesome. I feel, I feel those things. It's the human condition. I'm human and I go through life just like everybody else does. So I have those emotions that come up. What I don't feel is despair. And that I can't resonate with now. So it's important for me to hear shit like that in AA meetings. My favorite big book meetings are the ones where we read Bill Wilson paint a super clear picture of, in Bill's story, for instance, of despair, of being at the jumping off point, of dragging his mattress outside because he thinks he might dive through the window. Like those things are vital for me to remember. I need to remember those feelings that I had because I don't have them anymore, and be reminded of how intense and how bad it was. And, that's like when we hear about people that can't get sober and they kill themselves. That's super fucking relatable to me. And when I hear those stories, other people, people that happens to people, and you stick around recovery rooms long enough, you hear enough of those stories. And whenever I say some shit like that, to my wife, like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. So-and-so I knew that I got sober with, or so-and-so that I met at a meeting a while. Like, she doesn't get it, right? She's like, wait, why would he do, why? Because she's not one of us,
She's never had the despair of that.
She's had other things and she's had other, terrible emotions. And I don't want to take that away from her by any stretch of the imagination, because she has her own story. But the despair we feel as addicts, unable to make that change, is very real to people like us. And it's understandable that somebody would make that choice. Truly. I have been in that position where that feels like a very real fucking option, and maybe the only option. Thank God I know that it's not. Thank God that I had help and other, things materialized for me for whatever reason. The grace of God, I say, surrender. I was able to do that. Certainly not by my own, I certainly didn't do it by myself. I certainly don't deserve the praise and accolades for it. I was given another solution, but the despair is very, very real. Very real.
I agree on that. Like until I came into the program, really, I didn't think that there was any way. Like I had no examples of real recovered sobriety in my life. Like everybody where I grew up was an alcoholic of some form or another. Like a non-drinker was 6 drinks or less
Yeah,
in a
right.
night.
Right. Right.
Like and that was like for sure you're driving. If you've had 6, man, you're good to drive. Like you're the one who's driving. And so it was really, it wasn't until I hit the treatment center that I saw a room of happy recovered people. Never been in a room until then. So, like, how do you dream of that? How do you dream of that? You don't see that through the despair.
Yeah,
I don't think.
it's impossible.
Yeah. Woo, we're off to a cooker here. This is great, Tom.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh man, there was something you said that I wanted to say something about and I forgot. It was it was definitely, oh well, either way,
But we
that's,
had the freedom to stop and go back to it if you remember.
yeah, I'll write it down if it comes back to me. But it's all right. We've got a lot to talk about anyway. Do you want to start with the questions or do you want me
Sure,
to?
I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
And this just came to me. Uh, we talk about in recovery being able to do and go anywhere we want, including places where people are drinking.
Mm,
In early recovery, that was challenging for me.
mm,
I had to be very uh, careful with the places that I went, who I attended them with, why I was there, that sort of thing. Um, Eventually that changed, and I really felt like I can be anywhere. Um, Now, granted, the places that I want to be are different than the places I used to want to be, but I can now be in a place where like recoil from alcohol as a moth from a flame, like that, or is it from a
mm.
hot flame? Um, that feeling is very real. And I was trying to think of the first time I felt that. Do you remember the first situation you were in where you were, or may have been around booze or around people drunk or around partying or whatever, and you had the realization that you're like, I am completely fucking unaffected by this? Because for people that are new in sobriety, they may
Mm.
not believe that that's real. I didn't believe that that was real.
And, I spent 17 years, that I would call my on and off white knuckling period. At the end, I was in my alcoholism and addiction 37 years. But from the time I was about 35 to 52, I knew there was problems. I would like quit long enough when someone was mad at me or for them, right? I wasn't
Mhm.
quitting for me. But in those periods where I was white knuckling it without a program, I was for sure resenting whoever I was quitting for when I would be around it. Like literally
Mhm.
remember those feelings. And I would like, if we were sitting here and you were like holding a beer, I would start to fixate on it. Like
Yeah.
I would fixate on it and literally it would ruin my night. Like, and so one of the funniest things is that I came out of treatment and 8 days later we had tickets to Boney M. And I
To
know it
who?
sounds Boney M, like rah rah
Who's Bo?
Rasputin, like disco Boney M.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you, I saw them like 6 years ago or 5 years ago. It was the best concert I've ever been to in my life, dude. And I have seen a ton of concerts. Every person there like sings in unity. Like the feeling
Yeah.
of unity was insane. And and so I didn't want to miss this show. And so coming out of there, and there was a friend who had gotten seats beside us who was, fully there with his brother, and he was a drinker and his brother was a drinker. And so that was like the first thing I was coming out of treatment. And I was just like, wow. I'm like, this doesn't bother me at all. I am totally having fun. Like I was dancing and having fun more than anybody who was drunk or whatever. And it didn't it yeah, I was completely neutral to it. Like it just didn't matter to me. And that was the very first time that was like that in my life when I was not partying. Like I
Mhm.
remember that very distinctly. And one thing I heard that somebody say, is they like to say, I'm a recovered alcoholic at a meeting. And the reason they like to say that is because they want to show the newcomer that recovery is possible, right? Like, and, uh, and it's something that right now I've been thinking about and kind of trying to wrestle with inside my brain because I don't have any compulsion for it. I don't have any thoughts about doing it, and and I do feel recovered to a certain amount. Will I stop my program because of that? No, because I see the program as the maintenance of that spiritual condition that gives us that daily reprieve, right?
Yeah.
Like absolutely. I don't think like just because my car is running well, and I say my car is running well, doesn't mean I'm never going to put gas or oil or fluids in it. You know what I mean? And that's what the
Yep.
program really is for me, for it. But I feel right now like a completely different person than who came into his program, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's that's what we want.
And what about you? What was the first time?
Well, I was thinking of a situation that came later in recovery. There had been instances before many where I'd gone to parties or family events, or, I live in a place where people party
Oh,
all the time. Like adults our age, 40s, 50s, 60s are partying like they're in college, legitimately.
oh yeah.
If people get in big trouble. It's, you know, big trouble with themselves, lose everything. This town sucks people up big time. So people are hammered at 3-year-olds' birthday parties. People are, taking psychedelics. A bunch of women took psychedelics at my wife's baby shower. You know what I mean? Those sorts of things. Not my wife, but people.
Not
Anyway,
my
that's
wife.
kind of the norm. So for me to exist in this world, I need
Yeah.
to be very comfortable
You need
in
to be
my role.
bulletproof,
And
man.
yeah, and I am. I do these things sober, and frankly, I don't do them late at night because I don't like to do shit late at night. So that's helpful. But um I when I was it throughout my drinking and drug use days, I followed a specific band around, and kind of went to a lot of their shows, and the big drug scene, big drinking, big drugs, heavy drugs.
You're not
And I
saying the band name?
well, it's the band is name is called Widespread Panic. It's like
Okay.
a jam band, a lot Fishy, Grateful Dead. I mean, not like those, but similar crowds. A hard partying crowd, let's say. And I really loved it. It was like my jam. It was a thing that I really enjoyed to do. Um, and when I got sober, I was scared of doing that. I didn't think that that was the right environment to put myself in. So I took a 10-year hiatus from going to those shows. For whatever I just stopped doing it. I moved to Mexico. It was harder to access that sort of thing. Few years ago, 4 years ago or so, I flew back to Austin, Texas to see some shows with a buddy of mine who was here in the program, sober too, who liked the same sort of thing. And we went to these shows, and I remember feeling a little apprehensive. This is one of those bands that has such a hard partying following that they have a sober table at the show, which is like a group of Widespread Panic fans that are sober, um, that have a table and have representation. And there's a meeting at the break between the two sets of music that you can go to and be part of
Whoa.
a, yeah, super. So like, just like they say, anywhere that people party hard, there's also recovery. And that's very true. In towns like Las Vegas, in towns like Sayulita, like there's hard partying here, but there's also really good recovery. Go figure. Um, Enough of us need to get sober. So there's that representation at these shows, which was lovely. I walked in and said hi to the people and donated some money to the table, and, let them know that this is my first show back in a decade. And I was so happy to be back, and blah, blah, blah. And it just gives you that like peace of mind that there are other like-minded people, because surrounding you is a shit show. You know what I mean? It's mayhem. People sniffing ketamine off their hands and doing all sorts of, it's not the casual joint being passed around. Another level of debauchery. So it's helpful to have that there. Anyway, I went to this show, and about halfway through it, I had this like realization that I was okay. It was this one like boogeyman in the closet that I had kept there for the last 10 years that it was this like, when I can go back to a Panic show sober and be all right, that's when I know I'm in a good spot, that I've got it. I don't want to say recovered, but take that as you will, you know, I've recovered. Um, and I was there, and I just so viscerally remember the feeling of like euphoria, really, of this like, I am, because I love it. I love the band, I love the music, I love it. And I didn't want to give it up forever, you know? And being back in that environment and being, and frankly enjoying it more than I ever had, you know, truly. And I used to hear people say shit like that, like, "Oh, this is better than it was drunk," and I would always be like, you're out of your, that's just some bullshit people say to like make you think that's cool. Whatever.
Yeah.
It was true. I didn't have to, first of all, I wasn't going to the bathroom every third song. Second of all, I wasn't worried about getting arrested, walking in with drugs. Third of all, you know, it's just the laundry list of things that were better. But in reality, I could remember the whole show. Um, it was just this feeling of, I can do this. I can do anything, right? I
Yeah.
can put myself back at the scene of the crime, so to speak, right? Like the epicenter of my using and debauchery and whatever, and be neutral to it. I didn't care what people next to me were doing. I
Mhm.
didn't care that things were going on around me. That, I mean, good for them. I'm not judging them. I don't give a shit. That's a completely separate situation from me. And
Yeah.
I am in this place. The friends, a couple of other guys that we were with were loaded too. You know, one of my buddies was blacked out drunk. Whatever. You know, I'm just gonna make sure he gets home to the hotel, but that's where my, you know, that's it. That's my connection to it at all. You know, so it, frankly, it was this like God conscious moment of, I have these spiritual experiences, and I don't want to sound all hokey, like music gives me a spiritual experience. I'm not necessarily saying that. It was this spiritual experience, the combination of factors. Like I was in a, doing a thing that I love so much in a environment that, you know, frankly had scared me prior, and realizing that I was safe and I was taken care of. And it was a very spiritual experience for me, and a really wonderful one, that like, just another one of those things that happens as you stay sober and walk this path of like, okay, this is just confirmation that what I'm doing is the right thing, you
But
know.
also there's a there is the feeling of freedom there.
Very much so.
Like what I would even call that like the verification of freedom. Like
Yeah,
there's the idea of freedom, right? Like I could go there, I could be free, I won't have compulsion. But to have that proof of that sensation, that's
absolutely.
verification of freedom.
And that's what it was. It was a feeling of freedom. And it
Yep.
was one of the better feelings that I've ever had in my life, frankly.
That's what Sayulita was to me on this trip this winter. Like I was literally going to the lion's den where, man, I've done all the unmentionables possible on earth. And what did I do? I started a meeting, came to every meeting I could go to, and met great guys like you, and just uncovered this beautiful recovery community down there that I had not seen because I was too clouded, right? You know?
Yes.
And now to me, it's like when I think of coming back down there, I'm like, man, I'm going to see you. I'm going to see Gabby. You know, I'm going to, you know, see Jenna come to the meetings, you know,
Yeah.
hear Steve yell at us all.
It's amazing how, you know, it's really just a matter of perception, right? It's a matter of what you see and what you
Open
focus on.
mindedness,
Because
too.
when you were down in Sayulita before doing dirt or whatever you were doing, we were there, man.
I know.
You know, we existed. The life that you are talking about was
Waiting for
here
me.
as well. But you were you might as well have been as far away from it as possible. You know, it's
Yeah.
like these things exist in tandem.
Hmm.
The For me being sober at the concert, for me being completely loaded at the concert, both are very real things that are open to me. It's just a matter of what I choose to focus on and
Hmm.
how I choose to see things. You
And
know, I
that's
think
where the freedom's in our minds, man.
yes, I think I mentioned this. I may have mentioned this before in one of our previous podcasts, but living in a place like Sayulita, a gal who came down and spent some time in our recovery room who has a lot of sobriety said something that was very fitting. And she said that the veil between light and dark is very thin in this town. And it is. There
Mm.
is uh, there is some very wonderful, bright, spiritual stuff going on. And there's also a very seedy side to things that you
Ooh.
can find yourself mixed up in and really can run you through the ringer fast. You know what I mean? Um, and it's just a matter of which side of that veil you choose to walk on.
Hmm.
You can have a completely different reality based on what side you're on. And that's why, for me, I would never be able to survive in a place like this on the other side of that veil. I would be dead. I would be in jail. I wouldn't be able to maintain
Hmm.
anything. Certainly wouldn't be able to have a family, certainly wouldn't be able to have a career, certainly wouldn't be able to have friends.
Yeah.
None of that stuff is
Yeah.
available to me should I cross that line. It just, those things evaporate and I'm incapable of having those in my life. On the other hand, when I stay on the other side, I get it all. I get it all.
Hmm.
And it's a matter of which side I choose to walk on.
Hmm. I remember what it was I wanted to talk about earlier.
Great.
Can we side train?
Of course, man.
We'll,
Free. You're
we'll
free to
side.
do it.
We got the freedom to do it. So one of the things that I did a podcast on discipline the other month with some friends, and going down that rabbit hole of talking about discipline. Like I used to think, when I had things like the program where I was like locked in all day, right? Like those commitments and the discipline that it takes to do those, that it was like a trap. Like it was almost like a trap that stopped me from having freedom.
Mm.
But I didn't see that the discipline to follow those commitments leads to the freedom from doing that work, whether it be on my physical self, my mental self, my spiritual self, all those things. It's like that discipline of action and commitment to it actually, like, it may create a patterned movement in my life, but that pattern movement is really the key to the freedom for myself. Because
Hmm.
without that, like, I end up spending time thinking, what am I going to do? First of all, like, there's the what am I going to do anxiety part of life. But then there's the did I do the right thing part in my brain. And both those things rob me from the present moment, and really our program is designed for us to become more present, right? And so, anyway, it was I just wanted to have a comment on that because I think there was just something that, you were talking about, like how it's important in early recovery, to have that kind of program or that schedule. And I just wanted to say that in tandem to what you were saying to anybody out there, if it looks like you're losing freedom by following the program, stick with it and you will see that it actually offers all of the freedoms.
Totally. I mean, the alternative is chaos, right? It's not freedom.
Or stagnancy,
Yeah.
like stagnant chaos. Like, you're wondering why you're not getting better, you know, because you're not doing the things you need to repeatedly to get better.
Yep.
Like recovery doesn't happen with just a desire. It has to have action.
Very true.
Yeah.
Has Yeah,
I
you can't, what is it? you can't think your way into good acting, but you can act your way into good thinking, right? You got to
Yeah.
take the steps
But,
to
but you know,
change.
like kind of in conjunction when you were saying you felt accomplishment by having the ideas, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't work in staying
No.
straight. Like I can think, oh man, I want to be fucking straight, and there's no accomplishment in that if I'm sitting there doing drugs while I'm thinking that.
We've all done that, man.
Oh, we
We've
have.
all done that.
I
That
know.
is a very common occurrence. Like, God, I wish I wasn't
Mm,
drinking. I
mm,
wish I wasn't using as
yeah,
you hit the pipe,
yeah,
as you crack the beer,
yeah,
whatever. Man, totally,
yeah.
totally.
Okay, I got a question for you, Tommy.
Fired away.
Freedom to me means no longer being a prisoner of my own thoughts, fears, or impulses. What thinking pattern have you been freed from that used to control you?
Oh, man.
I'm going deep, Tommy.
What thinking pattern have I been freed from? So I have an example, but I
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say that I'm freed from it. I would say that I'm more free from it than I
that's
was.
fair.
Freed is a that would be the end goal, and I am very much a work in progress.
But you might be
Um,
freed this moment.
yeah, free this moment. That's a good one. One thing I've talked about on this podcast, especially the last time we had a chat about humility. I've talked about my tendency to become grandiose and think that I know better and think that I can do better than you. That is a troubling thing that I've dealt with my whole life. I want to talk about the flip side of that coin. Um, I very much have struggled with the I can't do it at times, that I just can't get it, that you seem to be able to do life better than me. And I'm just wasting everyone's time. And this is fucking bullshit. And, like this, my efforts are fruitless and I can't figure out how to, make them work. Um, and I think one of the main reasons, one of the big enlightening moments that I've gotten in recovery personally is the idea that we're all struggling through things. Nobody gets it. Nobody knows everything. Nobody is great at everything. We're all just kind of faking it till we make it in some capacity, And I used to think, certainly there are people that are quote unquote experts in fields that know more about certain things than other people. Yeah, that's for sure. But everybody's got some sort of failing and everybody's got some sort of area in their life where they're not so good at and struggles, whatever. I've gotten better at giving myself grace, at understanding that I don't know it all. I shouldn't know it all. I'm never going to know it all. And nobody fucking knows it all. Those sorts of things. And my efforts in one thing are just as good as somebody else's efforts in one thing. Whether they bear fruit or not, that's not for me to say, right? I can only do what I'm capable of doing. And that concept has given me a lot of freedom from myself, from my own self doubt, from my own criticisms. I, certainly not, I'm not perfect with it. Certainly, I slide back into the oh, poor me, whoa, I can't do anything right. That happens. Um, but it's far less so. I mean, I used to live vacillating between I'm better than you to I'm worse than everyone. Like that, those are my two modes of operation. Um, and I certainly think far less frequently that I'm better than everyone. That I really have kind of gotten a handle on pretty well, because that's frankly fucking crazy. The the uh the other one is a little more um insidious, I think. The other one just kind of percolates a little bit, anything that doesn't quite happen the way that I have tried to make it happen can send me for like a questioning my worth, questioning my abilities. Um, and, you know, recovery and being with other humans going through uh, the human experience together, and sharing about it. And that's why I really love people in meetings that just tell the truth and tell it how it is and tell me how your life's going now, not how it went 25 years ago. Like, I want to hear about what's happening here. Um, that resonates so deeply with me because I I struggle on a day-to-day basis with certain things. And that's one thing that I really want to get better at and have gotten better at, have been granted freedom from living in those feelings, those negative feelings. I know that I'm capable of things. I have achieved much in my life and will continue to. And I have people that love me. That's an amazing fucking thing in and of itself. I have a family. I've put together a life of some sort where that was never a possibility for me before. So I know that, in my clear-headed state, in my when I'm connected to my higher power, when I'm connected to the universe or whatever, what have you, that I'm just another guy on the bus and I'm not worse than you. I'm not better than you and I'm not worse than you. And, being sober and being with people who tell the truth about themselves and who aren't caught up in the habit of just trying to make themselves look good. Because that's what a lot of the world out there is, right? Painting the picture of perfection. That's what fucking social media is, man. Like Instagram versus reality. I want to see the reality, and I get to see the reality in recovery rooms. That's where I see reality. That's where I can trust what you're saying is real. And you're not trying to blow smoke up my ass. You're not trying to convince me to buy something or do something this way or blah, 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 blah. Like that's where I can trust that you're real. You're being real and honest with me. And that then in turn gives me the ability to look inward and feel right-sized myself, to feel like I am worthy of the things, to feel like I do have good ideas, to feel like just like you, I have challenges and we all work through them and we try to figure out the best way to get through this, that. That's maybe the greatest, one of the greatest gifts that I've been given in recovery is to feel like you, to feel just like you. And that's what I wanted.
I love that. I was listening to this speaker tape about a month ago, and it's something I'm about to embark on right now. I kind of just joined this step working group to motivate myself to actually do it. But this guy, the guy had like 37 years of recovery when he was giving this talk, but he said that the first like 20 years of his recovery, he felt like, he had done his step work. He had done multiple, like he did a round of steps every year, this guy. But it wasn't until this other guy turned him on to doing a step 4 on his beliefs that the guy ever actually got fully free. He's like, what he didn't realize was, he had cleared up all his resentments with other people or his perceived ones with himself, but he never went and attacked the stuff like, I'm only worthy of love when, I can't do this. I'm not beautiful. Like all the little things from childhood that you don't get rid of, he now does, like alternates between a regular step 4 and one on his beliefs. And so that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing this summer, because I definitely feel that there was a lot of kind of physical but also emotional bullying where I grew up. And the problem is when you're a kid is you believe that shit people say to you, you know, and so I'm really looking forward myself to actually going in and attacking that. But when you were saying what you were just saying there, I was like, I'm like, that sounds like, something that might help Tom,
Yes.
like to really get in there and actually kind of attack some of those core things that you don't do.
Yes, very
And
much so.
yeah, so he was really he said that that was the game changer for him for freedom. And so it's kind of funny that we're here on this podcast with that. So, okay, so for me, freedom to me means no longer being a prisoner of my own thoughts, fears, or impulses. What thinking pattern have I been freed from that used to control me? Well, I would say one thing that I'm really, like Tom said, I'm not freed from it, but I'm definitely, working on surrendering it. And that is kind of intolerance, acceptance, and expectations with other people. Like those three things wrapped into one, they really controlled my emotions. Like I was often angry or sad or whatever one I decided to go to the extremes with. But I would use my expectation of you as a reason for me to get angry. And then that was like I could go, and that was my excuse to maybe go use or be upset and go use or whatever it was, that was using other people, their responses really as scapegoats for my addiction. And now, obviously I'm not going to use, but I'm still, until the great resurrendering of March 2025, I was still trying to be the one controlling my defects. And now I'm really using prayer with gratitude in all circumstances and surrender to try and, get some help with these defects and shortcomings. And so it's the route that I'm currently doing on a morning by morning basis. I was just doing it 20 minutes before we came on here, and it's amazing how if you're doing the wrong thing, it never works. And when you start doing the right thing, it actually starts having some phenomenal results.
Yes.
It's really funny because I find for myself, I could do the wrong thing for so long and I get nowhere.
Yeah, totally.
And like even before, I would have beat myself up like, oh, I'm so stupid, I forgot that I wasn't thinking right, blah blah blah. And I would have turned it into a pity party. But now it's like a celebration that I've actually just gotten a chance to do the right thing,
Yes.
you know?
Well, it's also, it's a matter of perception, right?
Mm,
I'm looking at this the wrong way.
yeah.
I can, when I'm stuck,
Hmm.
be it in addiction, um, or another way, but addiction we'll use for this example. When I'm stuck in that loop, I can't have a different perspective. I can't see it from a different angle, whatever it is, my life, the problem at hand, whatever the relationship, whatever. When I'm out of that, it's just like when you're talking to somebody else about their problem, and you're not in the mix of that problem. You have a completely different view of, and this is why sponsorship is so important. You have a completely different view of the situation than the person that's actively in it. And oftentimes it's a much clearer view of that particular situation. But when you're stuck in hamster wheel of addiction, you can't see outside of it. And you don't really, the way that you're trying to force something to happen or manipulate something to happen, that's the only way that you feasibly can see it working, and it never works.
Mhm.
But when you change that, when you shift that and you break that cycle, you're given a whole new outlook on things. And lo and behold, the new thing that you try works the first try. It's fascinating how that happens.
I agree, 100%. And I'm really glad that I just finally got to start using the tools, even if it was at 51 and a half. Like, if I'm just happy that it happened to me before dying, completely ignorant of it. You know,
Totally.
like
Yep.
I'm not lamenting I didn't come in the program earlier. I'm just so happy that I finally got here.
Absolutely. And any lamenting on that is a waste of time, right? It's
Exactly,
a
though.
complete waste of time. It
I
didn't
wouldn't have
happen.
learned
It
anything.
wasn't meant to happen.
Yeah,
Who knows why it didn't happen, but it happened now.
yeah,
That's all there is to it, you
yeah.
know?
And I want to say for anybody out there who's new and listening and maybe older, like, you can have some phenomenal healing when you start treating yourself well. Like, if anything, I think that's one thing I'm living proof of right now. Is like, through activity, through everything. Like, I feel like a lot of my cognitive forces are coming back. I had some cholesterol issues and stuff, and man, my doctor was just like, "Wow, can't believe you've pulled that down without some kind of medication." And it's just through taking care of myself, like actually giving a shit and making sure that I'm having some discipline and some commitment into that care of myself. Because what I've realized is that when my body is wrong, like when my body's not getting taken care of, I have much less hope of having a good program.
Totally.
Yep.
And you getting sober at 51, um, your experience helps another guy. You know what I mean? If there weren't people that got sober early in life, late in life, middle of life, if there weren't people if we didn't, span the whole spectrum, we wouldn't be able to help anybody on the spectrum. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Everybody had to get sober at age 30, then people would have to get sober, then somebody at age 18 wouldn't have,
90% would die because they'd
yeah,
give up.
didn't have examples and people to show them that it's possible to get sober at 18. If people didn't get, some people get sober at 80, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have examples of. So it's, your experience is your experience, I believe. My experience is my experience, and that gives us the opportunity to help other people that have similar experiences, that
Mm,
are able to hear a message in our story and our shares that resonates with them. Somebody's going to resonate with some shit that you share, um, and then somebody else is going to resonate with some shit that I share. And that is the beauty of this. There are always people out there that you can gravitate towards, and you can hear a message in what they're saying that will resonate with you. And everybody has a slightly different story of or slightly different version of the same story, and that's why this is all so important.
And like, that's really one of the things I love is that going to a meeting, the number of times where I'm just like, do, and then somebody I might not have even said hi to, somebody I might not have even noticed in the room, gives a share that is like the guiding force to the rest of my life. Like, at that moment, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I needed this change, and I had no clue where it was coming from. In fact, I didn't even notice that person was there. And then all of a sudden, they're just saying the most life changing thing that is like really the key to the puzzle that I'm currently working on.
Yes.
I love that. Like, that's one of my favorite things about the meetings is just some of the messages that pop out like so unexpectedly.
For sure.
And just being open to that, like being open to not knowing what the next right thing is.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know we don't know what's good or bad.
I know, but when we think we do, we're guaranteed
Yeah.
to probably like miss a bunch of stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, you
I
got
want
another
to,
question?
so I don't have I've been trying to think about how to formulate this into a question and I can't
Okay.
quite do it. I want to, but I want to bring something up and I want to talk about it. Um, and I want to be careful about how I do it because I've been, it hit me as we've been talking about some of the things in my life that can make freedom look like an illusion and why that's a good thing. So bear with me here. I
Okay.
was thinking about two things. One, obviously, I've been given many freedoms in my life from sobriety. And one of those has been the ability to get married and have a family and maintain those things to a relatively positive degree. Um, and
Okay.
I certainly can't have that shit without being sober and
Mhm.
without being, and not even just being sober, but having a program like Alcoholics Anonymous where I can deal with all the other shit that caused me to not be sober.
Mhm.
Um, it's given me a chance to have those things, which are things that I always wanted and thought were, potentially impossible for a guy like me. So that's certainly wonderful. Now, um, when I think of the word freedom, I can sometimes think about, well, I can just do whatever the fuck I want whenever I want to do it. That's freedom, right? I can do whatever, whenever. Now when we get the things in life, the job, the house, the family, the friends, the things that come with um, practicing the principles of AA's 12 steps. Um, when we get those things, we can't do whatever the fuck we want anymore. You know what I mean? Now I have responsibilities and I have people in my life that their opinions and feelings and needs and desires and whatever are just as valid as mine. You know what I mean? So now I've created this life, which is lovely. Um, but there are also other people in that life. And no longer do I have the freedom. And I can mean just like, oh, I've got kids and a wife. I can't fucking zip off here and go do whatever I want for 6 weeks. I can't fly to Thailand and hang out for 6 weeks and, chill on a beach. I just can't do that. That's just not my reality right now. I've got stuff going on here. So that is one example. But the bigger one, the one that I'm talking about now is I need to make personal changes in who I am to fit what my family needs. I can't just think about me. I can't just go off and do whatever the fuck I want to do, whatever I want to do it. I've got things going on, and I need to make sure that um, their needs are being met,
Mhm.
whether they be physical, food and shelter and all those things, or emotional needs. Am I giving my children, my young children, what they need?
Mhm.
Am I giving my wife what she needs in a partner? Um, and that to me can be painful growth. Those things, when I'm not doing them and they're brought to my attention, uh, hurt, and that's hard for me to hear. And my initial reaction can be one of two things. Can be, I'm never going to be good enough, I'm not going to be able to do it, I'm such a piece of shit. Or fuck you, you don't understand what I do for you, you don't see this, that, and the other thing. It's those two defense mechanisms that were my always defense mechanisms as long as I can remember. The
Mhm.
fuck it or the fuck you. I can do that all day, all the time. And that's always my initial reaction. Initial. Now, I don't always say that, but
Mhm.
that's internally, that's what goes on in my head.
Mhm.
Um, Now, when I'm doing the deal, as they say, when I am spiritually connected, I realize that that's nonsense, right? And that's a very valid point on their part. And I need to look inside as to what I'm missing, where I'm missing out. Because am I free to say, fuck you, I'm going to go to Thailand? Sure, I am. I could. I could drive to the airport, get on an airplane, fly to but then I lose all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then I jeopardize all these other things. So am I free? Sure. But am I really free? No, not if I want to keep the things that I have that are of, the most importance to me. So I'm forced, the opposite of freedom, to make changes, to make adjustments, to look inward at what these people who I love more than anything find to be, not so great, and see if I can fix those things and see if I can work on those things. And sometimes that's a purely personal, internal, job with me and my higher power and my sponsor and people in A, whatever. And sometimes that's a joint effort with the whole family or just me and my wife or me and my kid, whatever. But they aren't things that I want to do, right? If you ask me, do I want to go in and do the difficult stuff and figure out why I can be an asshole or why I'm being selfish or why, I'm not, firing on all cylinders as a husband or as a father. I don't want to do that, frankly, in the moment. Do I want what's on the other side of it? Absolutely. Do I want to both be there for them in the way that they need me to be there? Yes, of course I do. I also know that it will make me a better, happier, more serene individual. I know that the benefits from that. So on one hand, I'm forced into doing some work that I don't want to fucking do, frankly. I don't want to do it. But on the other hand, without doing it, I jeopardize the most important shit in my life. So that's what I was thinking about when it comes to freedom.
Okay.
I
I
didn't
got
have a
something to say to
question,
you.
but fire away, Milan.
Okay. First of all, it's not actually yours to fix. If you actually really look at this program and believe it, there was this guy who came on here in the middle of March and he said, this isn't a program of self improvement. This is a program of surrender. This is like me throwing you right at you because
That sounds like an interesting guy.
I really love this guy, man. Like, I can't wait for us to book another one coming up with him.
Yeah.
But, like literally after that, having what you said and talking to my sponsor about it and talking to a lot of people about it is that we keep thinking that we've got something to fix. Like you just said it right there. It's something you need to work on. You literally contradicted the exact thing that you told us. It's not ours to change. And so all that is like what the program says, because I've started going down a rabbit hole on this whole surrender thing, man, is all that we need to do is have the willingness for that to change, and then we pray on it. So the thing is that you probably maybe will never be free of those thoughts, but the thing that we do is we implant the thoughts of like gratitude, like I get to do this for them, I'm not trapped in this, like I have the privilege of being here today for them. And when we start to change that internal thought, like Michael Singer, the Untethered Soul author, I think we talked about him before together. Have you read that book?
Yes, I have read that book.
So he also, goes on and has a bunch of other books. I'm listening to the Surrender Experiment right now. But like, one of his main things is that we're never going to get rid of that negative self-talk. But what we do have control over is for us to, in the spaces between it, to create the positive thought, that actualization towards the positive spin. Like we get to do this. We can bring, the what is it? The got two words I'm thinking of: honor and respect into this moment, right? And so, like, we can start implanting positive thoughts around those negative thoughts, and then eventually there'll be more positive thoughts than negative thoughts, just by a sheer, like, way that our brain will osmosis them. And so, like, we are guaranteed never going to push those negative thoughts away, but we can suck in more love to our
Hmm.
situation. And that comes through surrender, about, like, us not wanting to control the moment, like, and in that circumstance, like, man, when I'm tired, I have exactly those same two thoughts that you were thinking about. Like, I 100% identical. Like, what did I fucking get myself into here? Like, I've got such a big ball to fucking roll, and some
Yeah.
days, that boulder seems like the size of a mountain. And if I'm well rested and get myself prepared to be in a good mental space, I can fucking push that mountain around like it's a soccer ball. But
Hmm.
on the other days, it's like almost impossible to. And one thing I'm learning for myself right now, is that there's days where I'm just not even trying to touch it. Like, there's days where I'm just like, I know that I'm not going to push this in a positive direction. And I
Hmm.
literally just am like, okay, I got to just minimize the things that I have to do today and give myself a little bit more time on the side here.
Hmm.
Because I could, with my job, I could work 120 hours a week. And if I don't pull the reins back, then there's nothing that'll stop me from other people taking those reins and just dragging me along all day
Yes.
long with it. And I am finally, like yesterday, I had to take my mom to the airport. I had to get up at like 2:30 a.m. And I'm back at like 6 a.m. and I'm just like not slept enough. Like, I was like, this is not a good thing. And I knew I wouldn't go back to bed, but I'm like, I'm gonna lie down for 2 hours. Like, I'm like, regardless, I'm like, I'm not exercising right now. I'm not eating. I'm just gonna go up and just try to reset the day. And it really did. It kind of gave me the new day button there. But, honestly, Andrew and I, like, we're running with the surrender thing from that conversation, and the inspiration that it gave us is just so huge, man. And
Well, to your point, Milan, about the willingness, and yes, I believe you're right. It doesn't need to be this, big interior journey where you're working and uncovering, and it could
tick,
be,
tick, 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 tick.
it doesn't need to be that. Um, but having the willingness to change and the willingness, um, and then praying about it and letting God take care of it, that's more than half the battle. I find myself at times, and this isn't a conscious decision, I
Mm,
find myself unwilling to change. That initial knee-jerk reaction that I talked to you about, the fuck it or
mm,
the fuck you, um, that is comfortable to me because
mm,
that's safe to me. When I'm angry or I'm withdrawn, I'm safe. That gives me this feeling of you can't hurt me now. When I'm open and willing, which is the place to be, because that's where, that mountain you're talking about, not only does it become like a soccer ball, but it starts to move on its own. You know what I
mm.
mean? You don't have to do it.
Yeah, like,
Um,
it's just like a game then.
yes, that can be a very uncomfortable place for me at times because it's vulnerable. And we've talked about this, I believe. Um, when I'm guarded and I'm withdrawn, I I'm not worried about you hurting me because I've already taken my emotions out of the situation.
Now, question though, when you don't have that willingness, Are you praying for willingness?
No, never. Of
Well,
course not.
okay, so here we
Yeah,
go.
that's the problem.
Like like like
That's the
like
thing.
my sponsor would say to me, he gets to the root of it, and he's like, "Are you praying for that? Have you prayed for that?" He's like, "So what are we talking about before?
Yeah.
If you haven't prayed for it," and he's like, "Then
And when I do, it's like the light bulb. It's like the sky slowly opens. It's like one ray comes, then and when it does, it's like, oh shit, maybe I'm not right here. Maybe I have some work to, maybe I have some amends to make. Maybe I have some wrongs to make right, because I am so certain that I have been undervalued and I'm not appreciated and you don't see, I'm all those things. And when I start, when the lights start to come on just a little bit, I get that realization of, oh my gosh, I'm not seeing things for how they really are, and wow, I need to readjust my perception of these events. Um, because I've been living in a world that's not real. It's just this made up shit that my head keeps telling me. In my head, my brain tells me lies all the time. It just does. And that's why it's so important to be connected with people like you and to tell people the truth and to have um, people that aren't living inside my brain, uh, let them have their own perspective and value that perspective on what's happening, because without it, I'm lost. I become crazy very quickly. So yeah, that's
I'd go right there with you." I said to my family one time, like when you were saying, "Oh, don't you know all the stuff I've done for you?" and blah blah blah. Like when you were talking about that in your head, like
yeah,
I've said that. I'm like, "Don't you realize all that?" They're like, "We never asked for it."
yeah,
Like you think we want that. We
yeah.
actually
We
just
just
want,
want a happy present father.
yeah, like that's what they want. They want the
Yes,
happy. They don't want us, like, they're like, "Man, dude, I'd live in a tent with you if you were happy and nicer."
totally,
Yeah,
totally. None
yeah.
of that shit is stuff that they've asked for.
An
They just
eight-year
want,
old does not care that they've got a 300 square foot bedroom.
right. Totally. They just want a happy present father.
They're like, "Dude, I'd rather swim with you on the beach and make a sandcastle."
Speaking of crazy, crazy things, my head tells me, and this is just an example of, if I'm if I stay sober for the next month, it'll be 8 years for me. And I have
Woo!
crazy thoughts all the time. And for um, new people that are dealing with that or struggling with that, I just want to give an example of last weekend for me. I was, and this is how insidious and hidden these things can be. I Unexpected they can be. My family and I were driving somewhere for Father's Day, to a beach that's a couple hours north of here. That's this beautiful spot that we love to go. We went there for Mother's Day. We go there for Father's Day. We go there 2, 3 times a year, and we really, really love it. And it's a very special place for us. And we always have just the greatest time. Before we get to this place, is this, we drive through a number of little rinky dink Mexican side of the road towns that are just nothing towns. And passing one town, the last one before we got to the house, was what they call a deposito, which is a beer store. It's not a liquor store, it's a beer store. And it's a large store that's literally packed wall to wall, ceiling to floor with cans of beer, Corona, whatever it is. Um, and driving by, and next to it was just this little shitty one room house, like tin roof, concrete walls, no plaster, just like a dirt floor, a nothing house. And my mind went, boy, wouldn't it be great to live in that house next to that deposito by yourself? And you could just walk next door 10 times a day and nobody would bother you, and you'd just be sitting there in that one room house drinking with nothing to do. You know what I mean? Those are the thoughts that pop into my head from time to time. Now, I realize that that's insane. I realize I mean, that is just a very clear depiction of what some people call the disease of alcoholism, right?
Mhm.
That's just this, it's like the devil on my shoulder, right? Just chirping in my ear, like all this stuff that you have, this love in your life, these people that respect you, these human connections that you've made, this relationship with a higher power, these things that give me life. Um, you could just throw all that away and just live by yourself and drink yourself to death in this little tiny one room shack. Doesn't that sound great? And part of me believes it. Part of me agrees with it. Part of me says, yeah, that does sound fucking great. That sounds great. In reality, it's the worst thing I could imagine. It would be the worst existence, no matter how long or short it was, um, that I could have. Yet I have them, yet I feel that, yet I think those thoughts from time to time, and it's pure insanity. And that is just, the best description of crazy that I can give you. Um, I don't I don't know that it'll ever go away. I do know that the time it takes me to right the ship back to, wow, that was an insane thought, man. Let's keep driving down the road with our family and enjoy this weekend. The time it takes me to get there is short, but it still happens.
Yeah.
Those things still come up.
Like that's wild. Like that, just that it was like that was a pretty big visualization.
Oh yeah. No, these happen.
Like
Totally.
that was like a pretty big, good story you told yourself.
Yeah. No, no, it's involved.
Yeah, like
There,
you've
there,
already like my bed's blue. I got a red pillow.
I don't go into that much detail, but it's the
But you lived in that place. Like you literally moved
yeah.
in your brain.
Oh yeah. It's the insanity of alcoholism,
Yeah. Like
truthfully.
that was a viable option for even 30 seconds or something.
Yes. Throw it all away, man.
Yeah.
Throw it all away. This could, it's like a cartoon with like the, the whatever the object of desire is that like, come get me, it's uh it's wild and it's crazy. And frankly, I appreciate that. I appreciate these things happening because it is a reminder that I'm not, that's why I don't necessarily buy into the recovered alcoholic. I understand the
Mm,
reason that people use it for the newcomer, but I'm not fixed. I'm
yeah.
not recovered. I am less crazy and less of a danger to myself and other people than I
Hmm.
was. But
Yeah.
I will never be a finished product, I
Yeah.
believe. These things and reminders like that are important to keep
Hmm.
me focused and keep me hungry to get better and better and better. Because I don't like those feelings. They're not pleasant. When I pull out
No.
of they are make me feel yucky, you know?
Yeah. Because
So
for someone with a good imagination, that actually happened for a second.
yeah. And listen, I am not, I know that that's a possibility,
Yeah.
that if I fuck around in that place for too long, then I find myself in that place. It might not be in that shitty house next to that beer store, but it's in a place where
Yeah.
I'm doing that sort of stuff. And that's definitely not where I want to be. So
No.
it's the reminders, the little shots in the arm of like, hey, bro, like this is serious. You have a serious um, malady, and a serious allergy that if you don't take care of it on a daily basis, eventually that shit's going to happen and you're going to find yourself in a tricky spot. So it's these reminders that I'm frankly grateful for.
And that's it's like somebody saying recently at a meeting I was at that they're using dreams really are gifts. because
Absolutely.
they get to go and feel all that horribleness of having a relapse and it didn't happen,
Yes,
you know?
absolutely. I've had those very, very real seeming using dreams where not only am I using, but then I'm lying about my using and I'm going through the what do I say to the people in AA? Do I tell them? Do I not tell them? What do I do? You know, it's very real and very scary. And when you wake up, I mean, that's the joy of waking up from one of those is real. You're like, oh wow, thank goodness that's not true. Thank goodness that didn't happen. And it, you know, it gives you a greater appreciation for what you have for a moment.
I've got another question for you. You ready
All
for it?
right, man.
Okay. Freedom to me is choosing love over fear, humility over pride, and progress over perfection one day at a time. What are you choosing today that reflects the freedom you found in recovery today?
Read the comparisons again. Love over fear.
Love over fear, humility over pride, progress over perfection, one day at a
Mm.
time.
Uh, Progress over perfection. You know, that if I can remain in that state of mind, um, in that like I'm doing the best I can here with what I have been given, and I will never be the best or I will never be the worst. Um, that's the remaining in that place of humility, as I've mentioned ad nauseum with you guys, is the key for me. Um, it opens up all the doors that I want opened. It gives me um, the right perspective on the world to be able to choose love, you know, to be able to help somebody, to be able to allow myself to be helped, you know. When I lose track of that, I become closed off to all the beautiful things that are out there, mainly other people, right? I lose the ability to connect on a real level. I can bullshit and I can try and I can pay lip service to whatever it is, but I I don't have the ability to really genuinely connect with other human beings. And when I'm able to do that, that that opens up all the doors. You know, in this in terms of my work, right? Like when I can shoot someone straight, and Milan, I know what sort of work you're in, and you work with people all the time, and I do something similar, although a little bit different. When I can not try to have all the answers, you know, I've given bullshit answers sometimes and been like, that was nonsense. You know, I shouldn't have said that. That was either not true or I just
Mhm.
tried to sound like I knew something that I didn't know. When I do that, it's never great. You know, when I'm able to say, "Hey, I don't know." You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that. I don't know. I'm not sure. Let me look into that. Let me try to figure that out for you, but frankly, I don't know what that word means that you just asked me, or I
I
don't
don't,
know the answer to your question. When I can say those things to somebody, always there's this level of like appreciation and connection that's like, all right, cool. This guy's a straight shooter. This guy is connecting with
mm,
me. When I can tell another person that asks me for advice, I don't know, man. Let's talk about that. Let's try to reason that out. Let's like work. When I pretend not to have all the answers, I I can feel myself sounding like I'm full of shit. And
yeah.
that doesn't feel good. You know, that and I don't think it's appreciated because I think oftentimes people can pick up on that. I certainly pick up on that with other people, and it definitely is off-putting when I pick up on it.
Mm,
So yeah, when that the idea of progress, not perfection, the idea of just another guy on the worker among workers, those sorts of things, like that to me is the key to everything else. When I can be there, I know that I have a good chance of connecting with another human being on that day and growing from that. And like I said, it all kind of trickles down or sprouts up from that.
Nice.
Yeah. Same question, Milan. What do you got?
Okay, freedom to me is choosing love over fear, humility over pride, and progress over perfection one day at a time. What am I choosing today that reflects the freedom I've found in recovery? Well, a big one for me that's happened really was, dealing with the wreckage of my past inside my addiction. Like there was a couple investment choices I made that really fucked us long term, and I was experiencing real threat of losing my home earlier this year, and just there was massive anxiety about that on a daily basis, and it was like really a conversation with my sponsor. He's like, man, he's like, from an outsider's perspective, he's like, you're coping amazingly well with this, and he's like, have you been praying any gratitude for the coping that's already happening for you? He's like, why do you think your higher power would want to give you more when you're not even grateful for the strength that you've already been exhibiting? And that really turned it around for me. And so, part of my morning prayer now is for the faith that is replacing fear in my life, and for that struggle that is really showing me how to gain faith in my life. And it's been a real miraculous turnaround from that moment where I started changing and doing that, where those things that I was really afraid of seem to be like, not in my time, not in my time. Let me say, the willingness to have that faith and for that fear to be taken away, and showing the gratitude for the entire process that's happening has, like, I am not fear free, but I am
Mhm.
much fear reduced. And the
Mhm.
situations in my life that were causing the fear are slowly progress towards perfection. Like, they're getting better. Even if it's a longer term plan than I had hoped, things are not like, I'm still in my house. I'm still in my house, and 2 out of 4 properties are dealt with, gone. And that was essential to stabilize our life. And
Mhm.
so it's been really kind of a faith, like a love over fear thing that's been building through prayer and gratitudes, like really in real fucking time. Like, man, I cannot tell you the difference in. But what'll happen for me is like, boom, too tired, or just like have some days where there's just too much coming at me, and by 3 to 5 p.m. I'm just like information overwhelmed, you know? And then if my
Yeah.
thoughts turn to those things that were causing anxiety or fear before, it's really easy to roll right back there. But I
Yes.
don't stay there for like a day crippled by it, Because that wasn't solving anything. But it was just almost impossible not to think of, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's that has been a real phenomenal education and experience to be part of.
I I love that. And in fact, I've, you know, similarly am in a bit of a financial unknown space myself. Certainly not as comfortable, quote unquote, as I would like to be. Just based on, factors that have happened here in this town and throughout the world. And I think a lot of people are in similar situations as us. And that can be incredibly stressful, probably one of the greater stresses people experience in life. And one of the promises, fear of people and financial insecurity will leave us.
Mm,
It is stated directly in our literature,
mm,
right? So if I have fear of financial insecurity, it's funny, my sponsor and his wife, who is also a very big part of my recovery, his wife as well, um, used to say, when we're stressed out about money, we know we got to give some away. We got to find somebody to give some money to because we're focused on the wrong shit.
Hmm.
I've always been taken care of.
Hmm.
I have always been provided for,
I
and
know.
when I get nutted up about not having enough or not being secure enough or not knowing, the number on the computer screen isn't where I want it to be,
Yeah.
um, my my focus is misplaced. I can't go out and poof make shit materialize out of thin air. What do I
Hmm.
need to do? I need to trust that my higher power has a plan for me. I'm not
Hmm.
certainly not sitting on my ass,
Yeah.
just I'm taking steps in my life to try to move the ball forward. I'm not in the results business necessarily. So what do I need to do, right? I need to pause and focus on what's important to me. And that, what you said, is gratitude. I have been given um, things that I never could have dreamed of. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Both material and immaterial. Both, the material things that are whatever, they are what they are, but also things like relationships and respect and love and, the real stuff. I've been given these things. Often, you know, not not by my own merits, just because I've been blessed. Um, so when I lose track of that and start focusing on this is what I'm trying to teach my 8-year-old.
Yeah.
It's not what you don't have, man. It's not about the
It's
next.
what you can contribute to the moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's focused right now on Pokemon cards, right? That's what he
Yeah.
I want this whatever Pokemon card. It's like, bro, you have a book full of fucking Pokemon cards. You know what I mean? That's what I need to start looking at. It's not about the Pokemon card that I don't have.
Yeah.
It's about the book that I do have. And and these are the lessons. I mean, these lessons as we raise children are so numerous. They're lessons for me too. Like the
Hmm.
shit that's out of my mouth towards my son, I need to be speaking it right back at myself 9 times out of 10, right? I
Yeah.
am not focused on the gratitude for what I do have. I'm focused on the worry and concern for what I either don't have or might not have. Some of this stuff isn't even
Hmm.
real,
Yeah.
you know? So it's the focus on gratitude. And that's why gratitude is such a big part of our program.
Hmm.
It's because we always end up with what we need, exactly what we need, not
Yeah.
necessarily what we want, because what we want, as we've mentioned, isn't necessarily what we need or what we're supposed to have. We
Yeah.
get what we need. And I've never been shown any other reality than that. I can give you countless examples of proof for that statement. I cannot give you any examples contrary to it, yet I gravitate towards the what if contrary point more often than not.
Because our society implants those concepts into us, man. And that's the thing is, there was a stat. I was listening to the speaker tape. If you watched 3.5 hours of TV as a kid, you were watching 15,000 commercials a year. Like, you want to
Mhm.
talk about brainwashing? We're fighting against, like for me, that means I'm probably at 300,000 freaking advertisements versus reading the big book 10 times. Like, you know, like there's a lot of deprogramming that has to happen.
Yeah,
Uh,
we could have a whole nother 10 podcasts on how to avoid the bombardment society has
yeah.
thrown at us on any number of issues. You know what I mean?
Turning it
How,
off, tuning it out. That would be a good
yeah,
topic.
I mean that is a lifelong challenge
Hmm.
because we are consumers of bullshit
Yeah.
oftentimes. You
Yeah.
know, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna pick up my phone after this and I'm
Yeah.
gonna reply to the work messages that I've missed, and then
Yep.
probably I'll hit some social media button and see some bullshit. You know what I mean? Whether
Yep.
it's negative news about the world or shit that I don't have that somebody else has, it is what it is. And
Yep.
recognizing that and realizing that isn't where our focus needs to be, I think is part of the battle. And then
Yep.
effectively tuning it out is a whole nother animal. So we can ramble on about that for months.
I think right now we should wrap this up because we both have work to go to.
Yes, sir.
And man, this has been a blast, Tom. I would like to get you back maybe in July sometime if you'd be
Sure,
open to
man.
that.
We'll try to line something up. Definitely.
I want to
mean-
do it. You're one of my all-time favorites to have on here, man. I love it.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Milan.
Yep.
This is always a pleasure. Like I said to you before, this is like a 2-hour AA meeting. It
Yeah.
fills my cup, man. I love it.
Yeah, me too. I feel like, woo, I'm ready, and I'm going to work from this, and then I'm going to chair a nooner meeting. So it's like I don't share, and I won't need to share because we just shared.
You got it all out.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay,
Beautiful.
everybody out there, tune in next episode for more recovery fun. Bye-bye, everybody. Catch you later. And thanks again, Tom. Please help us help others. If you like what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.